Hi, this is Andrea. I'm an autism mum. If you're listening for the first time, I'm here to be the voice of my daughter, other parents, professionals, and neurodivergent individuals through our own lived experiences. I want to give visibility to these superstars that most of the time behind the scenes make a huge impact on neurodivergent lives. Welcome to the Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference. Hi everyone, today we are recording from Oxford Creators, so be ready to hear some background noise. And I've got a very special guest. You might be thinking all my guests are special, but that's because they are. I just met him today for the first time. I've got Jamie with me. Hi Jamie.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming over. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited to talk to you about neurodiversity and everything that's kind of going on in that way.
Yeah, great. I'm very excited to have you here. So Jamie works for Response, which is a charity organization supporting adults and young people with mental health. And my first question to you, Jamie, is if you can tell us a bit more about what you do at Response, supporting and how neurodivergence might be integrated into your role.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you kind of said there, Response is an organisation that supports all ages. So a lot of the work that we do in adult services is kind of housing and supported living. I work in the children and young people's team, so we do a lot of community-based well-being, a lot of preventative work, work in schools, and really just trying to sort of fill system gaps around mental health to make sure that everyone gets the best support that they can get. And from a neurodivergence point of view, I think we are identifying more and more the need for certain young people to get specialist support around whether it's autism, ADHD, dyslexia, all the kind of different conditions. So we're as an organisation starting to do a lot more work around that, and my role in the organisation is the Neurodiversity Lead, so it's to really kind of lead that process and support kind of all the great work that's going on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for everything you do for the neurodivergent community. And now moving on to the personal side of things, what has brought you to this stage of your journey with neurodivergence?
So it definitely has been a journey. So my son kind of was, I suppose, the start of that journey. So he is autistic. He was diagnosed autistic probably about 2 or 3 years ago. But as with any kind of diagnosis process, probably a few years before that, as parents, we started to realise there was a kind of a need there. So I really started getting into what it meant to be autistic in particular, and then the kind of wider neurodivergence movement and things around that. And then within that journey, I was myself diagnosed as being autistic. So then I kind of went on a personal journey to really understand what it means for me as an individual, and then also to support the system. So I do a lot of learning, I think, and I'm still kind of learning every day about different things about what it means to be autistic and what it means to be neurodivergent. So it's an ongoing journey, but it's definitely kind of was initially sparked by my son and kind of getting the best support for him.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference. So autism is within a large spectrum of different traits. Could I ask you what traits do you have yourself? So I think in some ways I'm kind of, there is the typical traits that we see around autism. I think I probably tick some of those boxes. So I have kind of quite strong special interests in certain things. My big special interest at the moment is neurodivergence and autism, so I've kind of thrown myself into that. I kind of have sensory sensitivities, which I think are stronger than maybe a neurotypical person, so I'm affected by kind of sounds and smells and things like that. That can be quite sort of triggering for me. And I think routine is a big thing for me, so I work really well and thrive when I know what's happening and what the routine is. I don't do so well maybe when my routine is kind of broken. So I think we talk about autism as a spectrum, and that idea that every autistic person is different, but I think there are probably traits that I share with a lot of the kind of the stereotypes, I suppose, of autism, but I'm also just exploring some of that stuff still and trying to work out
little things and kind of go, oh yes, that's probably my autism that's done that or caused that to happen. So it's definitely an onward journey. But yeah, those are kind of the key things that I think I have.
It's a bit of a self-analysis, isn't it, once you get to know more about it?
Yeah, definitely. I do a lot of, like I said, reading and social media posts, and you see something that someone else has posted and you go, hang on, that's me. I share that. So yeah, it's very much kind of a daily thing for me.
Yeah. And how difficult has it been for you to grow up without the diagnosis? Because I understand that the diagnosis is quite recent.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 40, so I'm nearly 42, so it was only nearly 2 years ago. It's an interesting question because in some ways I don't know what it was like to grow up because I didn't even know that I was autistic, and in some ways I don't think I even knew autism was a thing. Like, I'd heard the word probably when I was a kid, but I think when I was growing up it was very much a sort of special educational need. Autistic people didn't go to mainstream school, all that kind of stuff. So I didn't know that this was something I had. But I think I'm processing a lot still, kind of looking back in my life and going, yeah, well, there were some tough moments and there were some things that I struggled with, and a lot of them probably linked to being autistic. I just didn't know it at the time. I had a pretty decent life growing up. There weren't loads of challenges, but I think where the challenges were, if I'd known that I was autistic and got support, maybe things would have been easier.
Yes, and I think we see more and more people around our age. I'm also 40, so we are probably from the same generation. Even though I grew up in a different country, it was exactly the same. I have one friend who actually works for a respite organization in Portugal that I know since I was 17 or 18, and that's how I knew about autism. But other than that, it wasn't talked about much back then. So it's really good to have all this awareness around it, so that people understand better and accept and are able to support autistic individuals and other types of neurodivergence in general. Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
Yeah, I often think it's kind of now is the best time to be neurodivergent. Not meaning that it's perfect at all, but we're making progress every day. Yeah. Things are getting better. The awareness thing, I think, is amazing. There's a lot of people coming out as autistic or ADHD, and saying they're famous people, so that helps with the stigma. And so yeah, we're definitely sort of got a long way to go within a lot of issues, but it's the best time it's ever been, because I think it's more accepting in most of society, and then that means more support for people.
Yeah, and there's also this. It would be interesting to have your views on. I've been hearing about, now everyone has ADHD, or now everyone is autistic. What are your views on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, because you see a lot of stuff again on a daily basis. This sort of backlash of everyone's got a label, everyone's that kind of thing. I think we have to come at it from a supportive and kind point of view, and to understand that it isn't that everyone's got it, firstly, but actually all these people that are maybe in adulthood are now getting diagnosis and such, it's because they didn't have the support when they were younger. They were still autistic, ADHD, whatever they was when they were at school. It just wasn't recognised, and we're particularly seeing it in women in particular, because I think the stereotype of all these conditions is a male-focused stereotype. So there's a lot of women coming out and saying, I think I'm ADHD, or I think I'm autistic, and their life probably before that was quite tough. They were just holding it and masking it and struggling internally, and this has given them a reason to realise what their life has been like. So it isn't that suddenly there's everyone's getting a label. There was a county council recently where some of the councillors were saying, there must be something in the water now to cause all of this, and it's like, no, it's always been there. From the beginning of time we've always had neurodivergent people. We just didn't know it, and we didn't have the awareness for people to realise that they themselves live with it. And I think if you're a person that's saying these negative things, I think you need to kind of just be more kind and realise that people getting a diagnosis isn't going to affect you. It's not taking support away from you as a person. So be kind and just let people get what they need to live their best life.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference. Yeah, exactly. I also saw that, and to me it was an absolute example of ignorance, really. We just need to think that science is advancing, research is advancing, there's a lot more understanding, and therefore it's only natural that the number of diagnoses increases.
Yeah, I mean, you do see it in other sort of more medical conditions. You say that, this rising diagnosis, or kind of people finding out that they're living with a medical condition. And again, it's like you just said, it's because science is getting better at noticing these things, whether it's through a blood test or a kind of diagnostic tool that we use for neurodivergence. Just we're better at noticing this stuff. So that's why we're seeing the increase in that. It's nothing at all to do with things in the water, or there was a thing quite recently about Joe Wicks was saying about how bad eating, so junk food, was causing ADHD, and again, he's completely wrong. And he's not a scientist, and he shouldn't be saying these things, because it's not helpful when people come out and make these statements. We need to trust the experts on this and actually realise that this, we're in a positive place with all of this.
Yeah, that's very true. I just recalled, I don't know if you know Hannah Gadsby. She's a comedian. I love her so much. She's just blunt and honest, and she's very openly autistic. And one of her episodes, I don't remember which one, I think it was probably Douglas, which is when she comes out as autistic. She refers to the US saying that the vaccines were, I think it was the COVID vaccines, causing autism on people, which is just ridiculous. But we know that there will always be this kind of views, and we just need to, as you say, bring the positives about it, focus on the strengths. And I'm a true believer that this world is a better place because we are all different. It would be very boring if we were all the same, and we tend as a society to follow rules, and I do understand that there needs to be rules, but it's so much better that we are different. We have different points of view, and all together we can just be more creative and have different ideas and make the world a better place.
Yeah, and I think that we can look back on sort of big moments in time that have happened, that have sort of pushed humanity on, and big famous people that we talk about as kind of icons of science or whatever. Probably a lot of them were neurodivergent. I mean, we're never going to know. There's a lot of people sort of sometimes talk about, was Isaac Newton or Albert Einstein, were they autistic? I mean, we're never going to know, and we can't diagnose people in the past. But potentially people like that were, and they drove humanity on into positive places and changed the world for good. So, we've just got to realise it's always been there. It's always been a thing. It's just we've not maybe realised it was a thing until now.
And the advance in technology as well, and social media, it just helps creating more visibility around topics like neurodivergence. Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference. So in terms of language, there's been some these debates about how we should use the terms like autistic person or person with autism. And I'm quite interested to understand your views on that.
Yeah, so I think my kind of initial view is it's whatever works for that person. So if that person is kind of happy to say they are a person with autism or an autistic person, I think whatever works for them. And there's been a lot of research into this sort of in the past few years, and the majority of studies come out saying that autistic people prefer autistic person over a person with autism. And it's interesting, you often hear person with autism being used by people who aren't autistic. But I think it does come down to kind of what works for the individual. I think for me, everything I do is autistic, is the way that I view things. Yeah. It's not something, a metaphor that's sometimes used is it's not like a handbag that I can put down. Not that I regularly carry handbags, but I can't put it down. I can't walk away from my autism. Everything I do, when I walk down the street, I'm autistically walking. Probably doesn't look any different to a neurotypical person walking, but everything I do is autistic, so I'm an autistic person. So I think that's how I see it. But again, if someone kind of isn't happy with that and kind of wants to separate that, I think as long as it's coming from the autistic person, I think we need to be careful again about kind of people outside of that community, because I think all neurodivergence, but particularly autism, is quite a strong community now, a lot of it online, and as long as we're in the community and we're listening to those voices, I think we just follow the lead of those people, and we don't. So if you're an outsider, we shouldn't be defining that language. We need to just make sure it's kind of authentic.
Yes, and that we respect the views. It's really, as you say, even though if we say a person with autism, for example, it's kind of separating the autism from the individual. But as you say, if you are autistic, it's always with you, whatever you do.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
Okay, so you mentioned your son, and that is autistic as well. So how do you feel about caring for someone who is autistic?
So I think the thing with my son is I have learnt so much from him. Mm-hmm. So he, I think, definitely masks his autism less than I ever did at that age. So, but I do see myself in him. I sort of watch him and learn from him, and kind of how he's being kind of his authentic self. So I think generally there are definitely frustrations day to day, kind of caring for him, making sure that he's being supported, that we're trying to get him into school, that he's kind of being supported by school. So there's a lot of challenges around kind of caring and supporting him. But I think when I step back from the day to day, I just think he's a wonderful boy. Mm-hmm. And my daughter as well, who's not autistic, and from both of them I learn different things, and I kind of feed off of their energy and love being around them. So I try and take kind of the positives. Maybe not in the moment. I think all parents of all children, not just autistic children or whatever, you get in the frustration. You think, oh, this is tough, and I need a break. So, but I think kind of when I step back and reflect, I just he's got so much to give in this world, I think, and he needs the support sometimes to do that. But I think he's going to thrive as he kind of grows up, and I just love watching that happen.
Yeah, we tend to focus on really the negatives and the frustrations as parents, and it's quite interesting as well that the way you look at your child is also different from the way you look at other children, because it feels like you don't have the same level of patience with your own. But as you say, we just really need to focus on the strengths, because in every weakness there will be a strength, and we need to hope that they will thrive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think generally there is a bit, again, this sort of movement of change in neurodivergence is towards a strength-based approach. We're trying to do that a lot of response kind of in the workplace, looking to the strengths of people who are autistic or ADHD or dyslexic or whatever, trying to come at it from a strengths-based point of view, but also understanding the challenges for that individual that needs support. But as we were just saying, there's so many people over time that have been neurodivergent and have thrived. Mm-hmm. So we need to look at it from that point of view. What can they achieve? How can we help them achieve that?
Yeah, exactly. They just need to have the right support to be able to do that, which actually leads to my next question. In what areas do you feel like neurodivergent individuals are failed the most?
I think, that's a massive kind of question in some ways. I think for me, particularly as a parent and as someone who also kind of works alongside schools as well, I think schools are struggling. Not every school, that's quite a blanket statement. I think some schools are doing it brilliantly, but I think there are a lot of issues in the education system and not understanding neurodivergence. So I think we need to get that support right, because obviously, the cliche that children are our future, but they literally are kind of the future for our society, any society. So we need to get that support right at the beginning, because then that gives them the chance to kind of be the best person that they are. I think otherwise it's just getting an understanding of the individual and what they need. That we need to listen to each other and just make sure that we're being supportive, because I think it's sometimes we fail to do that. We just think, okay, this is the way we've always done it and people need to fit in. And I think we need to move beyond that. And again, I think that's not just for neurodivergent people. I think it's just generally we need to be more supportive and strengths-based and stuff, and not just do things the way we've always done it, because although it might have worked, it's probably not worked for everyone.
Yeah, and sometimes there's reluctancy with regards to change. We tend to be very comfortable in the current way that things are, but change is needed, especially if we think there is a chance of improving the lives of people. And I always believe that even if there is a risk of failure, it's better to try than actually not to do something, because you do need to start somewhere, and as you start, things might develop in an amazing way that can help loads of people.
Yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, what we're doing at Response a lot at the moment is supporting the workforce that we have in being open about being neurodivergent, and also being open about what they need. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback saying, I feel more welcome at Response than I've ever been. I feel kind of included. And from a business point of view, I mean, we are a charity, but we are also a business. That means that those staff will stay longer with us, and we don't have to spend money to
Exactly.
re-recruit. So it actually does make sense for us to do that and to make people feel included. So yeah, it does make sense for all businesses to think about how can I do that, because it will save you money in different areas of your business. And I know for some people, money is the most important thing. So, well, great, let's come at it from a business point of view, because it does make business sense as well as every other kind of type of sense.
Yeah, it's a question of finding the right balance between business and whatever you do that can help and support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So besides your professional life at Response, besides being autistic, being an autism dad, what else defines you as an individual?
I mean, probably all those things take up a lot of my time, but I don't know. I think it's some of this neurodivergent stuff is a passion for me, as well as kind of being a work-based kind of stuff. So I do put a lot of interest and energy into that. But I think for me, I'm just really interested in making a difference. Mm-hmm. That's a big thing, and I think that's when I started my career. I started off as a teacher. I kind of went into teaching because I wanted to make a difference, and I think now working for an organisation, I think that's what drives me through everything. I do have other interests. I'm really interested in kind of music, and I do a lot of running and things like that kind of balance my well-being. But I do have this passion. I will sit in an evening and read a book on autism and then really enjoy it. And it's not just about me learning for my job or whatever. It is also something that I'm really interested in learning about. So I think that I've found my kind of something that ignites my passion. So I do a lot of stuff around that.
Yeah, and when we are working with our passions, actually our job doesn't feel like a job. It actually feels like something natural, and you enjoy it even more, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I found that kind of at the moment with what I'm doing.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
So who is the biggest support on your journey?
I think probably the biggest supporter is my wife, mm-hmm. because I mean, she's been brilliant with my son as well, supporting him and just being kind of a rock for him. But I think when I started realising that I was autistic, that was quite hard for her, I think, to begin with, to realise that she's got two autistic people to support. And I wanted to seek a diagnosis, like a formal diagnosis, and she was like, yeah, let's do it, let's go down that path and whatever you kind of need. So I think that, and I do, being kind of someone with a special interest in autism, I talk about autism a lot, and I think it can be a bit boring for other people. I understand that, but she's just really kind of just let me do it, and kind of listens to me and engages in kind of all that stuff. So I think I wouldn't have been able to do that without her.
Yeah, that's amazing to see, and we all need someone who is there for us all the time. So that's brilliant. And who would you say is your biggest inspiration?
I don't know. I mean, this is a tough question in some ways. I think I kind of am, particularly within the context of this conversation, I'm inspired by my son, I think. I'm seeing a lot of resilience from him. It, again, doesn't always feel like that day to day when he's struggling to go into school, but I do see him kind of pushing through, and he's advocating for himself, and he's kind of we can be really engaging and happy. So I think for me, he's someone that kind of who, and I'm also just excited about what the future is for him.
Yeah. I feel the same about my daughter. It's that feeling of they struggle, but they are so strong at the same time that it's even though they are just children, it's amazing to look at them as our inspirations, because fitting in the system can be quite difficult, but they still do it with a smile on their faces, and being their happy little selves.
I would also say kind of the other person that inspires me is also my daughter as well, because she's not autistic. She's younger than my son, and I think has to sort of put up with a lot. She sometimes has to kind of place, sort of second fiddle to him, because if we're trying to support him to get out of the house or something, we're having to say to her, just go and get yourself ready. He can take a lot of energy from the room when he's sort of struggling with things, and she just massively just gets on with it and is so kind and supportive of him, and just matter of fact, and sort of she could just openly says he's autistic, but it's just a thing, we're all different. She doesn't kind of have that, at least doesn't show kind of resentment towards him, and I don't think she does. I think she just sort of, it's just the way life is, and she just gets on with it. So I think that is also massively inspiring for me, because it just shows the love that she has for us and for him. And so she's just a quieter voice maybe in this conversation, but she is equally as important to kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it's great that she has that perception already, and she's there to support him. I often think I only have Melody, but I often think about having another one, and when I think about it, it's actually thinking about her and her future, so that she has someone to support her when one day I'm not here anymore. And I have a younger brother. We have 17 years of difference, and even though because of the 17 years of difference, he's very busy with his friends and all of that, and we don't see each other that often. We are still pretty close, and I'm so grateful that I do have a brother, because I was always telling my parents, I just want a brother or a sister, just give me someone to play with. It's good that they have siblings, and they have someone to stay with them in the future. So
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
I don't know how much you are into the Marvel world or DC, but one of the questions I ask everyone is, if you were a superhero or had a superpower, what would that be, and how would you use that to help neurodivergent people?
So I have an answer to the first part of the question, because I just think that question, I love superhero movies and kind of comics and stuff. And everyone, I think, if you're into that, you think, would I like to fly? Would I like to run fast? So I have a kind of a power that I would like, but I don't know how I would use it to help people. So the power I would like is the ability to throw something and it land exactly where I want it to land. So if I'm throwing like a ball or a piece of paper into a waste paper bin, it would always go in, and I could do that for miles. So have this ability just to perfectly throw something. That's what I would choose, I think, because it's quite helpful just in life to be able to go out, boom, I've thrown it. But I don't know how that would. I guess I could just go around helping the society by just picking up rubbish and throwing it into bins, but that's not necessarily going to help neurodivergent people. So I think that would just be quite cool to have.
Yeah, and I think probably the Royal Mail would like to have you working for them. Yeah. It would be a lot cheaper and faster to deliver mail, for sure.
More efficient.
Yeah. And I think you answered my next question, which is, what are your hopes for the future? But is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No, I just think we just need to keep talking about this stuff. I mean, it's great that you've got this podcast and we've got other people talking about things in the media as well. So just keeping the conversation up and not losing that momentum, and maybe starting to have more and more of those conversations with the people in power. which I don't think is happening just yet. I mean, there is definitely some push to try and get some sort of support bills through government. I mean, there's one recently that was going through, which annoyingly is not going to happen now that we've got a general election. But I think as we keep talking about it, then people who are in the places of influence and people who hold the money will hopefully, you know, make some changes. So that's what I kind of want to see, is just we keep up that kind of pressure and keep being supportive as well.
Yeah, that's it. It would be great if those in power actually listen more to us and find ways of changing the system to the benefit of everyone. And I don't say it's only to the benefit of neurodivergent people and children. I also think it's important for everyone to have this understanding. And you know, one of my views, for example, on education is, if we take our neurodivergent children away from mainstream schools, for example, how will the other children be aware of autism, of ADHD, of dyspraxia, of dyslexia? They won't. So I'm all pro inclusivity, and I really think that's how things should go in the future.
Yeah, because I mean, in outside of school society, we don't keep our autistic people separate. We don't give them, don't take them to different shops and they go to different leisure centres, whatever. So, I mean, schools are meant to be inclusive, and there was a big push probably about 20 years ago to be more inclusive and to stop having kind of specialised provisions that separated people. We've not perfected that, but we need to understand that society is inclusive, even if we don't always recognise it and appreciate that. So yeah, we've got to do that with schools.
Yeah, definitely.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
And finally, if your heart had a voice, what would it tell us?
So I think just to be more kind, I think is the thing. There's a song by Frank Turner which is called "Be More Kind," which I think just perfectly sums that up. I think sometimes we get frustrated with each other as humans. We get frustrated with governments. We get frustrated with our kids. I think we just need to sometimes take a pause and just be more kind. And those three words, I think, sort of just sum it up quite well for me. Of just think about everything in a kind way, and then we will get better outcomes because of it.
Yeah, that's really good. Jamie, thank you so much. It has been a great pleasure interviewing you and hearing all about what you are doing. I would also like to thank my auntie Margarida for facilitating our connection. And I wish you all the best. And I hope to get to interview at some point, maybe next year, and see how things are going for you.
Yeah, great. No, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
And that was the amazing Jamie Douglas. I hope that he is as inspiring to you as he is to me, with all the work he's doing around neurodiversity and his own lived experience. And I thought that his episode would be the best way to end season 1 of the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. My summer break is starting now, but don't worry, because we will be back at the beginning of September with season 2. And you cannot miss season 2 because I have amazing superstar guests that you will want to hear from, starting with Darren on the 7th of September. Have a fantastic summer, and I hope to have you on that side from the 7th of September, which will be when the first episode of season 2 will be out. And remember, I believe in the good things coming, so you should too.